Welcome to Tech Talent Today, where IT leaders share their tough challenges, creative solutions, and latest insights. You'll discover fresh ideas and inspiration here with your host, IT staffing veteran and president of Claremont Technologies, Jody Kulik-Mayer. And now, here's Jody.
Today, I'm excited to be speaking with Jeff Miller, CEO and founder of Potentia Workforce, a consulting firm that helps organizations to improve recruiting and retention metrics by leveraging the talents of skilled yet often overlooked neurodistinct individuals. Jeff is an executive with more than 25 years' experience leading high-performance organizations, providing innovative solutions to the communities they serve. He has launched and led businesses in the 20 largest markets in North America and across 4 continents. Prior to founding Potentia, Jeff was president of a global workforce services firm, delivering record profits while closing 4 acquisitions in less than 18 months. Earlier in his career, he was division president for a healthcare consultancy, taking the firm from startup to a successful sale in 3 years. Jeff began his career for a Boston-based staffing and consulting firm where he opened and built their West Coast operations from Silicon Valley. After his son was diagnosed on the autism spectrum, Jeff began a deep exploration into neurodiversity, which ultimately led to the formation of Potentia, combining multiple passions to bring innovation to business internationally and opportunity to the remarkable and often underemployed neurodiverse community. Jeff is a graduate of Williams College and lives in the Houston area with his wife Samantha and his awesomely cool son Charlie. Welcome, Jeff. Thanks so much for being here.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
So we were introduced by our mutual friend, Jim O'Hagan of O'Hagan Career Coaching, and he was on the Tech Talent Today podcast in July, Ignite Your Confidence and Land Your Dream Job. So Jim loves what you do. So at Potentia, so he wanted to introduce us. Can you tell us a little bit about Potentia?
Sure, and I should say he knows that I landed my dream job, so I think he's supportive of that as well. So so Potentia is a neurodiversity consulting firm. We connect organizations to neurodistinct talent. That would be individuals who are ADHD, autistic, dyslexic, etc. That make up about 25% of the workforce, and yet we find that many companies either don't access this talent pool at all or don't know how to do it really effectively. And so we help them do that through a couple of programs. One which is really around recruiting new talent and how to do that effectively. And then the second one is about the acknowledgement that if 25% of the workforce is neurodistinct, and yes, you did hear that right, 25% of the workforce is neurodistinct, then companies of really any size are going to have people already in their midst who are neurodistinct. And in a lot of cases, those folks don't ask for the help that they might want or need to be as happy and as productive as they might otherwise be. So we focus on recruiting new talent, but also helping to optimize for existing talent that's probably already in your building.
Right. So one thing that you said right away that struck me is you said this works for companies of any size, because a lot of times you feel like there's programs at the large companies. So can you talk a little bit more like how that works at smaller companies?
Sure. And we have worked with companies of all sizes. And what's interesting is their motivations may be a little bit different. I think there's a lot of overlap, certainly. But a smaller company is going to have different needs, different ways of working than a larger company. So where a large company may have decided that, look, we're a leader in our space. We really want to have a neurodiversity program. We want to publicize it because we know it's going to help our brand, and we want to benefit. We truly want to benefit from more different types of talent, including those who think differently. For the smaller company, they may not be as focused on, hey, we really need to have a big splashy neurodiversity program. They may just be looking at normal workforce challenges that they're facing, mainly around recruiting and retention. And they may come to decide that, boy, being able to optimize for 25% of the population that we're currently missing is a business benefit that we want to take advantage of. So for those guys, it's really about very tactical, types of needs that and they need to see, return on investment quickly on those things. But we found, fortunately, that our approach, and more importantly, these candidates, work equally well in big or small companies.
Right. I love that you point out that there is like an ROI on hiring all different types of people. I do want to dive in a little bit deeper about the benefits of hiring neurodistinct people.
Oh, you bet. And this was really the journey that I went on. I should give a little bit of maybe my background as well. So I was running a global staffing company here in Texas, and had been recruited to do that. I've been in staffing off and on for a couple of decades, and this was really what I thought might be my dream job until I founded Potentia. And so really around the time that my son was a teenager, I started doing research to really learn what adult my son's autistic, and we wanted to learn what adult autism was going to look like for him. He was 16 at the time, doing really well in school, but as we moved forward and looked at 26 or 36, we were it was a little foggier. We weren't quite sure what that was going to look like for him and how we could continue to support him as we have. And so I started talking to companies, in particular companies that had neurodiversity hiring programs. Now, today we're on a roundtable with about 85 companies in a neurodiversity roundtable. But when we started, there were only 4 or 5 that we could find. And what they were telling us, the ROI, the business benefit on this is, and it's proven true again and again. Number one, these candidates tend to be, on average, very high retention candidates. So a lot of people will point to neurodiversity programs. This has been borne out with ours as well, where you're averaging about 96% retention on average for new candidates that are coming into the program, assuming that they're well supported and looked after, and just given reasonable supports. The second thing that we heard, and again this has been borne out as well, is that on average, neurodistinct candidates tend to be more productive than their peers if they're working in areas where they're interested and have abilities, right? So they're more productive in those areas. And then the third one that we found that was really interesting is that neurodistinct candidates tend to pick up new skills faster. Again, on average, individual results could vary, but when you look at the overall, so you get candidates that are high retention, very productive, pick up new skills faster. And so for me, with an employment background, I was looking at this and saying, boy, this is incredible. This is really what I see that a lot of our customers are looking for, to hire high caliber individuals who could be with them for the next 10 or 15 years. So that was really that set of data that I learned directly from companies like Microsoft and SAP. Granted, big companies that were doing this, but had really done the homework on it and really gone to school on it. That ROI, more than anything else, was the thing that finally made me say, I need to launch Potentia. I need to take whatever skills I've been able to amass over my career, and I need to put them to use in service of this community that's just so deserving and is just looking for a fair shot to demonstrate what they can do.
Right. Though it seems like a win-win all around, right? That you're saying they're looking for a fair shot, but the companies that hire them really reap a lot of benefits. I mean, a 96% retention rate is almost like unheard of, right?
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. And the interesting thing on that retention number, what we find is that when we train companies on how to be more, we take neurodiversity or neurodistinct, we shorten it to ND. We say ND be more ND friendly as an organization, or have an environment that's more welcoming to folks who might be neurodistinct. When we train companies how to do that so that they can hire these higher retention workers, an interesting thing happens. The retention of the other workers tends to go up. They tend to feel these programs are very popular. People feel, a lot of people have a personal connection to neurodiversity when they see their company, walking the walk, so to speak. That's very encouraging for them. Some of them decide to be mentors to our new hires when they're coming on board. And we know that that's a very fulfilling exercise, both for the mentor and the person who's being mentored. So that it isn't just hiring individuals who are high retention themselves. It's actually seeing the overall retention within your organization go up as a result of these workforce programs.
So take us through your process a little bit. So when you start working with a company, what happens?
Sure. Well, one of the things that we acknowledge, we try to approach this with a lot of humility, right? So on the one hand, we've learned a lot. We've talked to we're on a roundtable with 85 other companies that are doing neurodiversity programs right now. So we've learned a lot, but we know that every employer is different, and so we try to approach it with a healthy dose of humility and say, let's figure out together how to do neurodiversity in your environment, because every company is coming from a different starting place. They may have different processes, different onboarding or mentoring programs, or certain best practices, or certain cultural things that they are just sort of known for. And so for us, the thing is, let's figure out, given where you are, where's the best place to do a pilot in your organization so that we can learn together. We can take all the best practices that we've learned, we can share them with you, and then we can determine together. We can make recommendations, and you can ultimately decide which of those you want to employ. But let's do it in a division or a department where we can really see how it works. And when inevitably something happens that we say, boy, we might tweak this a little bit the next time we did this, we're learning and again, the pilots are highly successful, but they're not perfect out of the gate, right? And I wouldn't want to, you're dealing with people and software and deadlines, and not everything is going to go perfect all the time. We want to learn those things in a pilot environment, really, really get it down, and then be able to expand it. So a lot of it starts with that executive sponsor is really a key role for us. If you think of Potentia, we work with HR and talent acquisition, sometimes with DEI for the bigger companies that have that. And then there's Potentia here. But the third part of that triangle is typically someone in the business, maybe a CIO or a CFO or VP of engineering, someone who manages large numbers of people, who gets this and who says, I'm willing to pilot this in my organization. When we have that, we typically have a really good potential client to work with.
Right. Now, absolutely right. You're talking about the IT department. Am I correct in saying that?
Sometimes.
As the business, yeah.
Yeah, I mentioned CFOs as well.
Yes. Oh, okay.
Engineering. You'd be surprised, maybe. At least I know I was. I was surprised at the breadth of available available candidates that we have and roles that they can fill. So we've seen people have a really high degree of success as bank tellers, or in marketing roles, or in HR roles. So if you think about it, 25% of the population is neurodistinct. That means 82 million people are walking around with a brain that works a little bit differently, right? It may work really better than most in some instances, and that there may be some challenges in other areas. But with a talent pool that big, we've got people that can work in just about any discipline, truly.
Right. Is there one department or business that lends itself more to it, that you find that a lot more people gravitate to that? I mean, the answer may be no.
No. And fair to say, I think I think IT is the area we work in the most, and I think that's true both because there are real legitimate needs and talent shortages in IT. I also think there may be a little bit of a preconceived bias there, or a feeling that, which by the way isn't true, but a bias thinking that, well, you're talking about autistic candidates, right? And they're really good at IT. And, I would point out that within our database, we've got more non-STEM candidates than STEM candidates, than science, technology, engineering, and math candidates. So while we do have a lot of candidates that could fit those IT roles, and if a client has a real need there, we're more than happy to help them to solve that. What we might say to that particular client is, hey, next time we do a pilot, if there is a next time, let's be intentional about doing it someplace outside of IT. And we don't prescribe where it needs to be, but just so that we're seeding the program, especially with bigger companies, that we're seeding the program in multiple disciplines, maybe multiple locations, so that ultimately this becomes just part of your enterprise-wide framework, just becomes part of your workforce strategy as a company.
One thing that came to mind while you were talking, so how do ND candidates find you? If somebody was interested in, getting into your database?
Sure. Well, the website is a great way to start. So potentiaworkforce.com. It's all one word. Potentia is like potential without the L, and then workforce.com. So that's sort of the one way, and there are instructions there to join what is called our neurodiversity talent community. And what that is that's the group of individuals that we work with. Some of them, by the way, are looking for work. Some of them are already in careers, but they want to connect with other neurodistinct individuals that maybe they want to be mentors, or they want to, just be supportive of their tribe, if you will. And so, that's been really successful. We've seen that grow a lot, and we're seeing more interaction amongst the members of that group. That's where we go first whenever we have needs. Now, both that could be internal because we're a majority neurodistinct organization ourselves. If we're hiring, we're always going to look to the neurodistinct candidates first. But also, if we're hiring for one of our clients for a recruiting initiative, which we call STARS, by the way, that's our recruiting initiative. If I mentioned that, so if we're doing a STARS initiative, well, the first place we'll look is our neurodiversity talent community. And then, if let's say it's a need, we had a need not that long ago for some engineers, and the client was all excited and called me up, and I said, "That's great." And they said, and the location is about an hour south of Reno, Nevada. And I said, "Well, I've been to Reno. What is south of Reno, Nevada?" And they said, "Well, we are." there wasn't much else. But we were able to fill all of those positions because one of the things that we find is that, and this has actually been true, the STARS story is really just exceeded my expectations completely. But in addition to doing programs all over the U.S. with STARS, the recruiting program, we've done work in Europe and Asia, Latin America. We're in Australia right now. And what we're finding is that the good news and the bad news of this, right, is that every city in the world that we've seen so far has this same demographic challenge and opportunity, which is lots of underutilized, underserved, highly talented individuals who may not interview well in the traditional sense, but could be great employees if you can figure out a way to recruit them and to manage them effectively.
Right. So maybe you could share some best practices. One thing that you said to me that I thought was really interesting, that panel interviews are not predictive of how a person would perform. I didn't realize that. So maybe you could tell a little bit more about that and also other best practices.
Yeah, I think just at a really high level, listening to a webinar like this, podcast like this, or gaining some outside knowledge. There's a lot more now that's being talked about, even just in the last 5 years since we started. Do a little bit of homework yourself on what neurodiversity is. Then talk to your people and listen to your people. And then I think look for areas where you can take some concrete action, because that's what people are looking for. So the first sort of best practice I would want to underscore is to be an ND-friendly organization. You need to listen to your ND employees today, to the extent that you know who they are. That can be a little bit challenging. A lot of ND employees tend to mask. They tend to not disclose publicly who they are if they don't feel like they have to. And a lot of times it isn't based on anything you're doing as an employer today. It might be based on some past trauma or a really difficult work situation that they had before they got to you. And maybe they did disclose and it didn't go well. And so now they're coming in and they love what they're doing with you, but they don't want to put it at risk by sharing what they, disclosing and maybe asking for something that, might help them to be happier or more productive in their work. So just understand that there's a long history for a lot of these folks, and it may not be anything that you're doing wrong, but but to counter that, you need to make tangible steps. You need to figure out what you can do action-wise to really demonstrate that you're walking the walk on this stuff. So I think that's certainly a big one. You'd mentioned the interviews. So one of the things that we'll do when we work with a company is just help them to maybe make some tweaks to their interview process so that it's more inclusive of what other types of diversity of thought and ways that people might correspondingly show up, but that's still predictive of can they do the work at the end of the day. So we've had a number of clients that have used panel interviews, and panel interviews, in our experience, folks in our community are notoriously poor performers in panel interviews. Something about the idea of sort of having to keep all the conversational balls up in the air at the same time when you've got 4 or 5 people and you're already anxious because it's an interview, means that a number of times our folks may underperform in that phase of the interview. Well, but that's problematic for the employer, right? Because you're not getting an accurate picture of how they'd be working for you on a normal Tuesday as a staff accountant, right? But maybe this is something that you've always had in place. So what we say is, if that's a common practice that you've used, and we're saying let's pull that out, we need to replace it with something. And so what we would replace it with is a mini project, where we let the individual take home some work that would be relevant to the type of work that they would be doing. And that works well on a number of different levels. And this is, again, just one little aspect of some of the training that we go through when we work with employers. It allows you to see how they do, in a work-related setting, or doing work that's similar to what they'd be doing. It allows the applicant to really get a sense of what the job is, and is this a job they'd want to do, right? And then the third one, which may be less obvious, is it's a great icebreaker, because a lot of our candidates may struggle with questions like, "Well, tell me about yourself," right? How much or how little should I ask to answer of that question? Or where do you want to be in 5 years? Well, I don't know. Those are hard questions for our guys. But if you ask them about work that they did and an approach that they took, a lot of our guys will just light up and say, "Well, as a matter of fact, this is why I did what I did here, and I thought that this was this," and it can be a really nice icebreaker. So for a number of reasons, we're not big fans of the panel interview, but we do replace it to help companies to get to that predictive aspect of can this person do the job, and will they be happy in that seat for a long period of time? Even though we're talking about different neurodistinct individuals, we still have to get to that point for the business to be successful.
Right. Though I think people and candidates in general don't like the tell me about yourself question, because it is so open-ended. I don't feel like there's anyone who really loves that question and feels good about it. We did a video with Jim O'Hagan on how to answer that question. So I think everybody struggles with what to share, how much to share. I also find in general across the board that panel interviews are very high pressure. So
they can be. And this is a common thing that we find, right? So the things that we train leaders on to be more, to be able to manage difference better, right? We talk about things like what, why, and how. So when you're a leader and you're communicating, talk a lot about what you want to accomplish and why you want to accomplish it. But can you give room on the how, right? Now, sometimes you can't. And maybe this is a situation where, hey, this is client facing. We have to do it absolutely this way, guys. I just want to be clear. But in other opportunities, you may have room for people, as long as they get the work done, right? That there might be an opportunity for some creativity to be shown in terms of how they do it. And the thing that I love about that is, as a leader, I'm showing faith in my people. I'm also not limited by my own intelligence or creativity. It's the whole team. Right. So if someone and when you're working with people who think differently, this is a great way to go. Again, where you can, because it gives people that chance to really take ownership for what they're doing and be creative with what they're doing. And our guys love that. But the reality is everybody loves that, right? The 75% of neurotypicals love that. So a lot of the things that we put in place that are really critical for the neurodistinct among us are very popular with the neurotypicals as well, because at the end of the day, we're a lot more alike than we are different.
Absolutely. Like you said in the beginning, when people put this program in, it improves retention for everyone. So
yes,
which
sure
is
does.
Fantastic. So do you have any success stories to share?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah. You raised a great point earlier. They're not all they're not all big companies.
Right.
So we've worked with some relatively small companies that have seen situations where, and they weren't necessarily, frankly, thinking about a neurodiversity hiring program. The challenge they were facing as a smaller business was that they felt like they would recruit junior talent, coach that talent up, and finally get to the point where they really were able to do the work, and then a bigger company would come in and swoop them up and throw a bunch of dollars at them and get them out. So the turnover on these roles was really, really high, and they were living that, having no idea that neurodiversity is a really strong way to combat that. Because you're hiring people who tend to be, as we said, higher retention candidates, and by making, helping your leaders to lead, like you just said, the whole group is more likely to stick around. Now that doesn't mean that everyone isn't, that nobody's going to take that call, right? But it means that over the course of a year, looking at a wide swath of people, that retention number should go up. And because people feel like they're supported and they're valued and there's core values alignment, and they see their company walking the walk, they may be a little less likely to take that call. And so we've had specific examples like that have happened. A bigger company example would be, I had a CIO who called me earlier this year, and we'd run multiple programs for them in different parts of the country, where we'd been helping them with a STARS program to identify new neurodistinct talent, new to them, that they could bring onto the organization, and then could rise from there. He called me out of the blue and said, "I just want to thank you, Jeff." And this is the CIO of a Fortune 500 company. And I said, "Well, tell me, what did I do?"
Right.
And he said, "I've got a well-earned reputation as a bit of a hard ass." Now, forget his language, not mine, but hopefully, Monday morning at 10, this isn't too racy. But he said, and it's well deserved. I hold my people to a really high standard. But he said, "I want to tell you something." He said, "After we started doing the STARS program with you guys, I've had 5 separate instances of individuals who've pulled me aside to let me know how much they appreciate that he was our exec sponsor, and how much they appreciated my leadership." He's talking now in running this, in bringing Potentia in and running this program. And they shared with me that they are neurodistinct themselves.
Wow.
And they'd never told anybody. And these were people that had been in my team for 10 plus years in some cases. And to be fair, I might have suspected in 1 or 2, and in a couple of cases, I had no idea. But the reason I'm calling you to thank you is, he said, on the one hand, I do believe on holding my people to a very high standard. I'm not going to apologize for that. On the other hand, this gave me a real opportunity to demonstrate the other side of my leadership, which is that I really care for my people. And I can't think of a better scenario than this organic one that came up, thanks to you guys, where I was able to show that other side of my leadership. And so, people know that, and that's what I've always wanted. I've always wanted to have a team that where we demand a lot of each other, but we care about each other as individuals as well. And I've always tried to strike that balance, and your program has really helped me to do that. And I said, can we put this on a billboard somewhere? Like, are we recording this? This is amazing. So that's just a real world example of how we've seen, in the case of the small company, a real competitive advantage for them. And in the case of the big company, a real culture change in a big organization. That is really and straight from the top, right? That it's really changed their culture for all employees, which we're really proud of.
That is amazing, because right, like changing the culture in a big company, right? It's like turning a cruise ship. Right?
Well, it is,
Yeah.
and one of the nice things about this is, once people hear about this and they hear about what we're doing, and they hear that, hey, look, our goal at the end of the day, our people need to be able to do the job just like anybody else. We just want to get them a fair shot to be able to do that, because the numbers show they're not getting that today, right? And then once they get that fair shot, it's up to them to make the most of it. But we think them not getting a fair shot, it doesn't really feel right to any of us. Well, once people hear about this and hear about what we're doing and why, nobody's against this. This isn't something that people are going to pick sides on, right? Everybody, gets behind this. So maybe that's part of the reason that these cultural changes can happen so quickly, because it's actually something that people can really unify around. And these days, isn't that a nice thing?
Absolutely. And I love that it just gives a different lens to look through the hiring process, your people. So maybe that's too. It's like an epiphany on how, because you've probably been doing things the same way your entire career, and then you're shining a light on something different, and then having the metrics to show that it works. So I think that's amazing. I also like something you told me, that when you work with candidates, you take like a strength-based approach, which is brilliant. Because why don't you tell a little bit more about that?
Well, we've just learned through the course of time that if you just think about it, you boil it down, where did we first hear about autism? Or where did we first hear about ADHD? We heard about it from the medical community. And the medical community's mode is to look at areas of difference and to try to cure those so that we're all kind of alike, right? And I don't attribute any nefarious motives to that. I believe sincerely that I think it's, they want people to live better lives, but it's definitely with that kind of a mindset. And so these people, we talk about, but that seeps into society. So when Charlie was diagnosed as a young boy, my son Charlie was diagnosed as autistic. We heard what we call the never conversation. That I didn't coin that phrase, by the way, but I heard it and I said, "Yep, I know what that is." And it's, well, he's probably not going to do this, and he's probably not going to go to college, and he's probably not, and he's probably going to need some help to learn. There are courses he can take where they'll teach him how to fold his own laundry, and Charlie's going to college now. I mean, if we had listened to that never talk, like, forget it, and so that medical model is it's pernicious. It's just that especially when you take that medical model and you bring it into the work setting, it's really problematic, right? Because in what setting would we just focus on areas of things where people are struggling, when they might have other areas where they're really, really succeeding,
right?
And invest more in the areas where they're really strong, if we can, especially if you're dealing with people whose brains are wired a little bit differently. It may not be, they may have an area of weakness, not to say that we can't all get better at things, but it may be particularly hard for them because of the way the brain's wired to be able to do this task in this way at exceptional levels. But more than likely, there are going to be other areas where they are better than their peers. And so why not spend more time on those? And so that's definitely the approach that we use and the approach that we encourage with the employers that we're working with. Because I think it's the right thing to do, but it's also just a smart business decision to talk strengths first.
Right. And put people where they're strongest. There's a school of thought, right, that you could spend a lot of time on your weaknesses, but you're never going to be great at it. So why don't you just focus on your strength? So I was always a big believer in that as well. So I'm on board with that. So Jeff, this was fantastic. Do you have a parting thought?
I hope I'm not breaking the rules. I might have a couple parting thoughts, but I'll make them really quick. I haven't seen a workforce initiative in 25 plus years of doing this that has these kinds of results. I would encourage people to do their own research, come to their own conclusions, but take a look at the return on investment that people are getting on, when they're doing neurodiversity hiring or neurodiversity retention programs. When you do, look at the return on investment, but also look at how modest the effort is. This is not a huge effort that is needed here to be able to access 25% of the population that at minimum most companies are certainly not optimizing for if they're recruiting for them at all, right? And then the last piece I would just say, and we touched on it a little bit earlier, but this is really for employers of all sizes. really, truly, any company of any size could benefit from more diversity of thought. We believe, and our programs are meant to to work with that whole that whole breadth of companies. So I think those would probably be my take homes, and just encourage, thank you. I want to thank you for the time, and just encourage your audience to look into this, because it's become my life's work, as people can probably tell. But it can really transform your business in some powerful ways.
Well, we're going to put how to contact you in our show notes, so people can reach out to you directly to, discuss programs and moving forward. But I think this was a really important topic, and thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure, Jody. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Tech Talent Today, brought to you by Clearmont Technologies IT Staffing and Search. You can find out more at clearmonttech.com. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and share. See you next time.